Our recording. Brothers and sisters, we thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Bible Show Truth Hour. This is part 2 of Biblical Black History. Part 1, we pretty much led you to Genesis, the 10th chapter, showed you how through the 3 sons of Noah, the whole world was populated and divided amongst nations, amongst what would be called today races, different languages, tongues, cultures, and so on and so forth.
Right.
This is part 2. We're going to go ahead and pick this up in the book of Genesis.
Let's go to Genesis chapter 37. Let's fast forward, black guys. Genesis chapter 37.
Genesis chapter 37.
Because the whole Bible deals with Israel. And the Lord changed Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel, sisters and brothers. You know what? Let's see. Genesis chapter 7. Genesis chapter 7. And picking up at verse 1. Genesis 37 and 1.
Genesis 37 and 1. And it reads, And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan.
Right.
These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren. And the lad was with the sons of BLAQ and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children.
Right.
Because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors.
And so now, to make the fast forward the story, Jacob loved Joseph, and Jacob's father's name was Isaac. And Israelite sisters and brothers, or Hebrew. So what happened is Jacob had Joseph, and Joseph was a dreamer of dreams. His brothers was jealous of him because his father favored him. And throughout, fast forward it down, they sold Jacob. His own brothers sold him. We're picking up at Genesis 37, black guys, and skip down. Look what his brother said. Verse 27. Genesis 37 and 27.
Genesis 37
and verse 27, and begin reading. We're trying to speed through this, sisters and brothers, so we can get as much of this in as possible. Go ahead.
Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites.
So now his brothers want to sell him to the Arabs, which are Ishmaelites, still Abraham's seed. Go ahead, Ice.
Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content.
Go ahead.
Then there passed by Midian merchants, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit.
So now some more Midianites, these Arabs, came and took Joseph out of the pit where there was no water, that his brothers left him in there because they wanted to punish him for snitching on him. And look what happened, black guys. What did they do? Continue at verse 28 again.
And sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt.
And then what happened at verse 36? All the way down to 36. And go ahead.
And 36, and it reads, And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's, and captain of the guard.
And so Jacob was down in Egypt, went down there, was sold as a child when he was 17 years old, stayed down there, and then was in prison, lied upon, and then eventually became the second, became second in command. And let's, for the sake of time, black guys, let's go to the 42nd chapter of Genesis. Now we're talking about Joseph, a black man of the generation of Shem, Noah's son, who rises up and becomes second in command.
Genesis 42
and 1, black guys.
Genesis 42 and 1.
Right.
And it reads, Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, Why do you look upon one another?
Go ahead.
And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die.
And what happened at verse 3?
And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt.
And Joseph's 10 brothers went down to buy corn in Egypt because Benjamin was left behind and Joseph was the 12th. Benjamin 11, Joseph being the 12, which became the 12 tribes of Israel. Skip down to verse 6 and continue, Black Ice.
And Joseph was the governor of the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth.
Didn't he dream that his brother was going to bow down to him?
Wow.
The sun, stars, and moons going to bow down to Joseph? Continue at verse 7.
Hold on, Brother Julius. I can't continue right now. I got to stop for a moment. I want you guys to really understand what we're saying right here. We want to thank Sister Donis also for calling in. But I want you guys to understand what we're saying right here, right now. Here it is. Joseph's brothers did something evil against him. They became jealous of him. They became envious of him and put him in a situation where he was eventually sold into slavery. Joseph ascended to be the second in command of the greatest nation on earth at that time.
Yes.
Joseph became the one who actually saved the lives of the same brothers that sold him, or that was responsible for him being sold into slavery.
Absolutely.
Now, I want all of you all who are listening to this show to keep this in mind. There would be members of your family that have evil intent for you. There would be co-workers and friends that may have evil intent for you, brothers and sisters. But there was a word in the Bible that says all things work for the good.
Right. To those who love Christ and keep his commandments.
Who love Christ and keep his commandments. So, brothers and sisters, although people may intend something to be evil against you, when you have the favor of God, it's all working in his plan, brothers and sisters. So at night, when you pray before you go to bed, you need to thank God even for your haters, even for your enemies, even those who come against you, because you need to be wise enough and have faith in God enough to know that these people are just working the plan of God for you and your life. Let's continue, brother.
So, Black Guy, we got to recognize that, right?
We got to recognize that.
And my question is, what out of all the things that we've done against God, he forgave us?
He did.
So why not forgive others?
They just, haters got a job to do too.
Wow. Genesis 42. Learning something on the way to learning something.
Genesis 42.
And verse 7, Black Ice.
And verse 7.
Now, remember, Pharaoh promoted Joseph. And he dressed like an Egyptian. He looked like an Egyptian because the word Egypt is slang for black. It means black. But go ahead, Black Ice.
And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, where are you coming from?
And go ahead, Ice.
And they said, from the land of Canaan, to buy food.
To buy food. Go ahead, Ice.
And Joseph knew his brethren, but they didn't know him.
Why? Because if you go back to Genesis, the 41st chapter, and read verse 46, it says, Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So from 17 to 30 years old, that's a lot of time and a lot of changes. You no longer look like you do when you 17 as to when you 32 or when you 42 or when you 50, Ice.
Now let me add a little twist on that, Brother Julius. Also, brothers and sisters, for the sake of color recognition when it comes to biblical black history, here it is, this Israelite that's passing for a black African Egyptian.
Just like the Africans from Africa can pass for us, and we can pass for them. Henceforth, they call us African Americans.
So, brothers and sisters, you know, Egypt was known for their makeup and their painting of their faces, their eyebrows, their eyelashes, their almost like what we see women do today. The Egyptians were big on that. So imagine coming before Joseph. He has this eye paint on. He has the makeup on that the Egyptians wore during that time, brothers and sisters. And because he was black, or the Israelites were black like the Egyptians, he couldn't tell no difference by the color of his skin. Let's continue, Brother Julius.
Let's go to Genesis chapter 45, Black Guys.
Genesis 45.
This is great. Genesis 45 and 1. Come on, my brother.
Genesis 45 and 1, and
Read
it reads, Then Joseph could not refrain himself
Right.
before all them that stood by him. And he cried, because every man calls every man to go out from me.
Right.
And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brother.
And what happened, Black Ice? Verse 2.
And he wept aloud. And the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard.
Because the Egyptians were there, sisters and brothers. Joseph was in the land of Egyptian, but he was a Hebrew Israelite in the land of Egypt. That's why I read this psalm that Israel dwelt in the land of Ham.
And what we will call today, brothers and sisters, black men, of some of which were Israelites and some of which were Egyptians, brothers and sisters.
Right?
Just look at us, brothers
Two different bloodlines.
Brother Julius is a little lighter than I am, but we're both considered, according to the standards of the world, as black, brothers and sisters. Same way the Egyptians and both the Israelites were. Let's go ahead and pick it up, brother.
Verse 3, black guys. Verse 3.
And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph.
He said what?
I am Joseph.
He had to identify himself, black guy, because he looked like an Egyptian. He dressed like an Egyptian. He had learned the Egyptian tongue. But his brother spoke what the language that became known as Hebrew, an Aramaic language. Come on, Ice.
I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence.
You would be troubled too if you ain't seen your brother from the age of 30 to 17. From 17 to 30, you don't know your brothers. You would be troubled too. And they dressed like black ice. You have worn a dashiki. You can pass for a Hamite. You understand? Come on, come on. Verse 4.
And Joseph said unto